Thank you, Ellie, so much for joining me today. I know you are, where are you zooming in from? Are you in England right now?
I am. I'm in Oxfordshire, which is just outside of London, about an hour out, and I'm in a small cottage about 8 miles from Oxford. So, in kind of in the middle of nowhere, but also not too far from the big city. So it's nice. Yeah, it's nice.
So I know, like all of us, we've been quarantined for a while. You did your music video for Power in lockdown. Did you shoot that yourself?
I did. Yeah, I had no choice really, but we just worked with what we had, and luckily I had Imogen, the director, on the phone with me, and she just told me what to do, and it was kind of weirdly liberating because I never really wear those kind of things, certainly not in bed, which much to my husband's annoyance, but like I just don't wear those kind of things in bed. I'm more of a like comfy pajama kind of gal. Um, but yeah, but it was nice because there were no film crew, and although I really appreciate them, they all make this videos come together. It was just nice to be on my own and have this kind of freedom. And yeah, it was like an all-female team. It was pretty cool and very empowering.
What made you want to, since you say that's normally not it was not too racy, but you're wearing a bit of lingerie and stuff. What made you feel like you wanted to do that for this video? Was it because of the fact that it was self-shot?
Well, self-shot, but also this song is kind of about superficiality, in the sense that it was kind of a mixture of stuff just being about sex, and realizing that like so much has been, so much is based on sex, and you think you're in love, but actually you realize you just weren't. They were just really good at bed. No, just kidding. um it was more like embracing yourself, by yourself, and just it was connected with like disillusionment of the beginning of relationships, and just like realizing that like they're not as real as they used to be, and they're not like the movies, and they're not like they're kind of dictated almost by social media, which is crazy. I hear people saying, like friends saying, like, oh, like, she's following this girl on Instagram, or like we've been DMing, and it's just like a whole new world of like, I don't know, it's so bizarre. But yeah, so I guess it was like having this, it was being in this moment of being kind of tired of the same thing, like the same things that happen when you date and going through the motions. So yeah.
Very cool. So obviously, although you've made music in the last 5 years, you haven't been completely off the scene. Brightest Blue is your first full album in 5 years. So an obvious question to ask is why this is the longest time you've taken between albums. Why the semi hiatus, if you will?
Well, Delirium, my third album, was I mean, it was taken up by like 3 years of touring, really. I traveled around the world twice, and then I had a couple of big songs on that album that meant that I was just kind of busy the whole time, and I don't really remember having like days off. I remember it was just such a hectic time that the idea of then going straight back into like writing and then touring for another album was like not, absolutely not what I felt was good for my soul at the time. So I I made a conscious decision to move to New York, where I felt like I could escape for a bit and no one recognized me. Well, I didn't think that anyone would recognize me. And I got to live kind of an anonymous life for a while, and somewhat, and I was in the studio most days, like, but if I didn't write anything, there was no pressure. If I did, great. And I could then figure out what I was going to keep for an album. But it was just a time where I had personal changes. I had like management change, and I just did not feel ready to like embark on all that craziness, chaos again.
I'm curious, when you were living a semi-anonymous or as anonymous as possible, low-key existence during that time, how was that good for your mental health? Because you've talked a lot in the past about how the sudden fame you came to about roughly 10 years ago, how you were unprepared for it and how it, messed, as it would with anyone, messed with your head a bit. How did it feel to sort of take a break from that?
God, it was so good. It was real time of confrontation, which I actually think a lot of us are having now, where we're having to unravel a lot of things and learn a lot of things about ourselves and about our own, like, just, I think it's really is a time um, for learning and for being confronted with uncomfortable truths. And I think that was even the case with me on a personal level at the end of that tour, where I didn't really know who I was, which sounds crazy, but I was just this like touring machine, and I just lost my identity in some way, and hadn't been home for a long time, and didn't really belong anywhere. So I had to try and discover myself, and it took a lot of soul searching, and took a lot of time by myself, and time walking around New York. And I could put my headphones in and just listen to classical music while all this madness was going on around me. And so I think that time alone, time away from just the music scene, I got to just figure out a lot of things about myself. And that's kind of what essentially made the album.
What was like your big takeaway from that made it onto the album? Like, did you have any epiphanies, or what was like your main realization about where you were at in life?
I think it was like that throughout my career, I guess I've always felt like I've needed someone. And I felt like I've always, like, I was really married to my job. Absolutely. I was everything was about work, and I didn't really have time to sort of have anything meaningful. But then when I did, I wanted to, but I couldn't really, give enough to it. So I think that I finally had this epiphany and had this moment of realization that shit, I actually don't need someone. And sometimes when I say that to people, they're like, well, how did you not know that? Like, how did you not figure that out? Like, you don't need a partner. You don't need someone to rely. You don't need someone as a source of your happiness. And I was like, well, I just didn't know this. I thought that you had to have someone that was, that person. I think it's just like growing up on bloody love songs, thinking that, if you can't live without someone, and that person, you can't go on without someone, and that person is your everything. And then I wrote New Heights, which is about reaching this other, like, elevated place where you're just like, oh my God, I'm in this place where I can be alone. I don't need the pressure of people telling me that I need to be with someone, or that I need to be married, or that I need to have kids. And it's just like having this like love for yourself as an individual, and then, whatever comes of that will, but that you have to be in that place to begin with.
Well, then the irony is you did actually get married last year. So I'm wondering, because there's this sort of saying that, you find love when you're not looking for it, or there's the other saying, like, you can't find love till you love yourself, or whatever. Was that a situation for you, that once you stopped wanting a partner or needing a partner, that all of a sudden one materialized?
I think it was that, but I did everything I could to, like, when I met Casper, it wasn't like, oh my God, like, now I found the one. It took a lot longer than that. But yeah, I think you're right. You have to be in the right place to find the right person. And sometimes you think you're in the right place, and actually you've got a lot more work to do. So I'm just grateful that I met him at a time where I really could give everything, and sat in a place where he could support my happiness and support my job and my success and my career and all that stuff.
I'm curious, since we got into that subject, was there any part of you that when you met Casper that you were like, oh, I was just finally, like, were you resistant to the idea of getting into a serious relationship because you're like, oh, I finally just got to a place where I'm cool being alone. I don't want a relationship.
Yeah, I have to admit that was kind of, it was a bit frustrating, because I really had got to a place where I was like, yes, I had this like light bulb moment, and I was like, now I can be single and happy and just do my job, like really commit myself to my job. But then you can't then, like, you can't overthink that stuff. Like, I met him and it happened, and I'm very grateful for that, and he brings me a lot of happiness, but he's not like the he's not like the source of my happiness. Like that's a different thing now. So yeah.
So you're newlywed. So how has the fact that, you know, any couple going through a quarantine or what's going on in the world right now, that, you know, to, you know, especially if you had a life before where you were working a lot and now you're together at home all the time, how have you guys adjusted, and how have you in general adjusted to
Um, it's, to be honest, it's been. I definitely feel a bit shyer when he's around. Like I don't like burst out into song every 5 minutes. Um, but we've had a good harmony. It's been harmonious. We haven't really argued. We talk a lot. He listens a lot, which is really important. And yeah, I suppose I listen a lot. We just have good conversations, and we tend to share the same opinions on things. And if we don't, we have discussion. It's very like, yeah, it's very adult. You know, it's not like it's not like this passionate crazy thing where we're just like screaming at each other and then we make up and whatever. It's very adult, and it's very like, you know, it's, I think for this time everyone has to be easy on themselves, and that goes for like marital stuff or like relationship stuff. Like, yeah, it's going to be tense, it's going to be unusual, it's going to be strange. Like every human being wants their own space regardless of how they feel about anything. And so I just hope that everyone's been easy, you know, hasn't been too hard on themselves in this time, because it's very strange. It's not anything we ever expected to experience. So
that?
but I hope we all change for the better.
Yes, I hope so too. So I had mentioned how, you know, you had talked earlier before in other interviews and op-eds and things that you've written about how unprepared you were for fame, or and the whirlwind of sudden success when it happened around 2011, 2010. So I'm curious to talk to you about that, because you've been very open about your mental health, which I think is awesome. I think you were one of the first to start doing it around 2013. Now a lot of people are talking about, even the Royals are talking about it, but like in 2013 they weren't so much. When you first started talking about anxiety or panic attacks or whatever, what was the public response? Was it embracing, or were people like, whoa, why are you saying this stuff?
I had a bit of both, really. I was amazed at how many people wrote to me saying thank you, saying thank you so much for speaking out about this, because, you know, I've been called a freak, and, you know, not being able to go to things because I'm too anxious, or not being, you know, anxiety has obviously recently become something very talked about, which is good. There's like, there's I don't know, like it's complicated because a few people have said to me like I have anxiety, and then it turns out like they just, you know, actually, you know, I labeled myself with anxiety, but I think I was just nervous about one work thing, and I'm fine now. And, you know, I think that sometimes something I've also learned is like when you label yourself, you have to be really careful with it, because I think labeling yourself can give you even more anxiety than you already had. And I'm still trying to like figure that out from like, I've got a friend who's a, you know, psychologist, and I'm trying to like talk to her about it. But initially when I was having these panic attacks, I didn't really think too much about it when I spoke about it. I was like, I'm just going to look, this is how my life is. Like sometimes I can't go to things because I'm too anxious. And it's not like I go, oh, I'm too nervous. It's a physical thing where my body simulates like some kind of crazy fight or flight thing where your body just freaks out, you start sweating, you start thinking all these mad thoughts, you know, your body simulates a heart attack. It's all these things that just like, you know, this is debilitating. I can't be going to events and going to parties and going to the studio because it's just like, you know. And when I think back to that time now, God, I you know, it was a really tough time. I didn't really understand what was happening to me until I had therapy about it. Yeah, but I also had people kind of saying like, oh, like, you know, it's you know, it's pretty crazy that you know, that you've shared that much and you overshared. And I'm glad I did. And to begin with, and I'll always talk about my, you know, my issues. And I realized how important it is to speak up about things, because you don't realize how much it helps people. It's like music. You know, you might do things to satisfy your own things and your artistic, you know, cravings or whatever, but then also the idea that you can help people with music and talk to people through lyrics, that kind of idea that everyone's going through the same thing is, I think, so comforting. So yeah, that's the long answer to that.
No, it's a great answer. I liked every word of it. I'm curious, when you first started having these attacks, though, was it during the time when you first started becoming famous? Was it sort of triggered or exacerbated by the fact that you were in the public eye? Especially as a woman, it can be stressful for any woman to be in the public eye, be scrutinized for their looks and scrutinized for their talent, doubted, all that. Like, was that what brought it on, or were you having that before?
No, I mean, it started. It started. It started. I was doing a shoot for a magazine, New Musical Express, Enemy, and Enemy was a magazine that I bought my entire teenage existence. Enemy and Kerrang, and they were like my music bibles. You know, I would just, like, every week I'd have to read about every single band, and like if there was a free CD, oh my god. So I was doing this shoot with them, and naturally I was nervous because I was like, oh my god, I've been buying this magazine every week. Suddenly I'm in the magazine and they want to do this feature on me, and the photographer was just a dick. And I remember he was just telling me to like do stuff that I was uncomfortable with. And that was the day that they started. I was just like, what did I get myself into? And that's how it started.
What was the photographer
Just like
asking
really
for?
like makes certain expressions, like faces, like, you know, like stuff, like rude stuff. And yeah, and I remember being like, this surely isn't how it is. Surely not. And actually it wasn't. It just happened to be one particular bad experience that triggered it. And then I was doing TV and stuff, and the idea of doing shoots and TV was just like, I didn't know this was part of it. I wanted to be a singer, but I just didn't know that stuff would come with it. And so everything caught up with me, and it took like a good few years to really get myself out of it. And now I haven't had a panic attack for years.
Oh, that's great. That's awesome. Did you, is there anything you did to manage that? Like advice you could give to other people, or did they sort of just, forgive me if I'm being ignorant with any of my questions. Did they go away on their own, or did you do something with
No,
their?
I think it's you can't assume that they will go away on their own. I think it takes unraveling, and whether you agree with therapy or not, it takes talking, it takes establishing where those triggers have come from. It takes a lot of, everything comes from your childhood, so you've got to confront it, you've got to unravel it, then you can tie it back up again. And it will always be there. I think we are, these days, we are very conscientious people. We think a lot. We've got a lot of information coming in. We've got a lot of things, we've got a lot of news to read. We've got a lot of situations to get caught up in. And we are going to be overthinking. We're going to be nervous. We're going to be anxious. There's a lot we've got on our plates. So it's like, it'll always be there in some way. I think it's just how you manage it and how you can use it. You can utilize it for creativity and for confidence. And so, it's taken me, some of my most anxious backstage situations have made for the most incredible performances. And,
Was the Grammys one of them? Sorry to interrupt. Was the Grammys one of them? Because I know you said that was a big moment for you in your career, and at the time you were nervous. But I remember it being a great performance.
So nervous. I was so nervous, and I to be honest with you, I have sacrificed a lot of performances for my nerves. Like someone will say, you have this big performance with this award show, and I'm like, I can't do it. And one thing I regret is I wish that my anxiety hadn't got the best of me, because I would have done so many more epic performances. But festivals, just you can get me out there on a stage with hundreds of thousands of people and I'll be fine. But anything on TV, anything live, anything that is tangled up in like American, like, music culture, it's like, for a shy English girl, it's just too much. It's been too much.
Well, one question I have left about that before we get back to Brightest Blue is, I've heard you say that you wish you'd had more help when you were first coming into the limelight and fame. So for new artists coming up, what help would you say they should seek out, or what's your advice to them when they're in the place you were at with Lights 10 years ago?
Yeah. I would say that it is, first of all, if you're a woman, I'm glad that I had the women around me that I did. I think that's that's really, really valuable. I think that if you just signed to a record label, I think it's important to say, like, just so you know, like, I'm nervous about this or nervous about that. My record label boss said the other day, we were doing this panel, pre-lockdown, and he said, back in the day when I saw that Ellie had a free week, I would put promo in and I'd make her fly to Europe and wherever to go and do interviews or to do radio performances. And now when I see that she's got a week in the diary free, I'm like, she can go on holiday, or she can spend some time with family or friends, or, go do a weekend somewhere or whatever. So I think it's really important to be really open and honest to your label and to your management. You'll probably have a manager of some description. And say from the beginning what you're comfortable with and what you're not comfortable with. If you don't want to do a certain performance, or you're not comfortable with something, I think you should talk about that, because then you might change your mind. But if there's truly something that is just going to damage your mental health, in that it will keep you up at night, then don't do it. Like, do what you're comfortable with. Do as much as you can, like, that you feel you're capable of, and then that you'll be healthy with. But don't bloody lose sleep over a performance. Like, that's just crazy,
Great advice. So to tie it back to Brightest Blue, because it's a very epic, very ambitious record, and it has two sides. For those who are watching who don't remember, albums used to, well, I guess vinyl's back. So we have the concept of side A and side B, but they seem to reflect different moods, different viewpoints. Can you tell me a little bit about why there's that division and what side A and side B represent?
Side A is ultimately all me, where I spent a lot of time in the studio with just a few people over the course of a year, a couple of years, and it's like a very honest kind of biographical. It's like I'm talking a lot about myself, about my experiences, about my coming to understand myself as a woman, and what changes there've been, what I've learned, and then a couple of songs about situations that I've been in where I'm just, it's just like a disillusionment of the opposite sex or whatever. And
I'm like, yep, I can relate.
And then side B is more of like an ego thing, where it's like an alter ego, where I get to play this character, where I can be this confident badass girl that can perform at the Grammys and billboards and bloody what else, and I can just play that character. And it's so much easier for me to sing those songs than it is to sing side A songs, in a weird, ironic way, because they are just like, I can sing these lyrics and not, feel self-conscious, because it's just this person, this amazing woman. Whereas side A is a bit more vulnerable and just completely honest and heartfelt, and yeah, I mean, but I'm like, I've rediscovered my voice a bit. I'm singing over different chords. My voice is just, it's brought out this whole other side of my voice. And just like, I think my voice will always be an instrument that I just, improve on and play with and experiment with. And I think it's like a mixture of those things.
Would you say lyrically, it's your most confessional record yet, or your most intensely personal record yet?
I think so. I think Halcyon, my second album, was particularly honest, because this one is more about self-love and how I came to have that kind of revelation. Whereas Halcyon, I'd just gone through a breakup, and it was just horrible, and I'm singing directly, to that person. So it felt like I was talking to one single guy, and therefore I could just unload all these feelings on this album, you know, writing like My Blood and yeah, like even the title, like even the first track, Don't Say a Word, and then I sort of, and then the song comes out and anything could happen. And but like some of those songs are so heartbreaking. When I listen to them now, I'm like, damn, you know, where did that come from? But you know, my fans still say it's their favorite album, so yeah.
Well, maybe pretty soon fans will be saying that
I
Brightest
hope
Blue.
so. I hope so. I hope so. We'll see.
Awesome. Do you know what, obviously, you know, it's ironic because we were talking about how you wanted breaks before you were touring so much. Obviously now touring's off the table for now. So, you know, little just ironic. But do you know, in terms of this record coming out, like what you plan to do once things are safe? Or are you going to get back out on the road and be a touring machine again?
I'm gonna try my best if I can. I think I'll have to do smaller shows. I've already been told that you can't be doing like these big venues, sadly, which is always fun. But actually, the more intimate venues are great anyway. And then, but I'm also trying to make my tour very green, very you know, I want my carbon footprint as a touring artist to be as small as possible. So that's going to mean, I mean, it's just going to need some innovating and some, you know, changes in, you know, transportation and in set design and in like there's so many things that need kind of changing. So yeah, I'm thinking about that a bit, and you know, I think I'm going to have to be a lot more hands-on with things and just be more of a one-man band, I think.
Well, I look forward to when it's safe for you to be out and right for your mental health and right for the planet and all those things. I look forward to seeing you perform live when
Ah,
we are all out of quarantine. And thank you so much for taking the time during quarantine
yeah,
to
thank you.
talk with me. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you. Me too. Thank you very much.